There's one question I asked Jesus that changed everything. Not just what I believed about love, but what I believed about myself. And, before I even tell you what he said, I need you to promise me something. Don't skip a single word. Because if you do, you might miss the one truth your soul has been praying for. You know, there comes a point in a man's life, especially when he's built everything the world calls success, when the noise fades and silence becomes louder than applause. I remember those nights. The house was quiet, the world asleep, and yet my thoughts, they wouldn't stop. You can build rockets, move cities, reshape industries, but still not build peace. And in that silence I asked the question, the one I think some of you have whispered too, somewhere between heartbreak and hope. Should I love again? Maybe for you it's not marriage. Maybe it's trusting again in business, or faith, or life itself. But the fear, it's the same, isn't it? The fear of risking your heart when it already knows the pain of loss. The fear of starting again when you're still bleeding from the last ending. If you've ever sat alone wondering whether God still writes new beginnings after heartbreak, this message is for you. I used to think love was something you find. Now I understand. It's something you build. And when I asked Jesus if I should marry again, I wasn't really asking about romance. I was asking whether a man who's been broken can still be made whole. Whether love can still bloom from ashes. But before he answered me, something happened. You know, it's funny. Jesus rarely answers the way we expect. He answers the way our soul needs. Years ago I received a letter from a man named Richard in Michigan. He was in his late 60s. He wrote, "Elon, I worked hard all my life, raised my kids, buried my wife, and now I just sit alone. I thought success meant providing, but now I realize I never learned how to be present." That line, "I never learned how to be present," stayed with me. Because you can reach the moon and still not reach yourself. And that's when I realized prayer isn't about asking God to give you something new. It's about letting him renew something inside you. When I finally asked Jesus, should I marry again, I wasn't just asking about another person. I was asking whether healing was still possible for a man who's known loss. Whether purpose can still live inside a cracked vessel. Before he spoke, there was silence. A silence that didn't feel empty, but sacred. The kind of silence where heaven listens before it speaks. And in that quiet, I felt something strange. Like God wasn't testing my desire. He was testing my readiness. You see, readiness isn't about time. It's about transformation. You can wait 10 years and still not be ready if your heart hasn't healed. But if your soul surrenders in one night of true prayer, heaven can move mountains by morning. So if you're listening right now, don't move. Because what I'm about to tell you in the next part might just explain why heaven's silence is not absence, but surgery. Have you ever prayed for clarity and heard nothing but silence? Real silence. The kind that doesn't comfort you, doesn't confirm you, just breaks you. That's where I was. The question hung in the air like unfinished music. Jesus, should I love again? And heaven said nothing. Days passed. Nights blurred. The world moved on, but I stayed in that sacred stillness. And for the first time, I realized something that changed how I see everything. Silence isn't God's absence. It's his surgery. You see, when you pray for an answer, heaven first prepares the heart that will receive it. And well, that's why some people never hear what they're asking for. Because they expect God to speak to their ears when he's still working on their soul. Many people pray. Few prepare. That's why when truth finally comes, it doesn't bless them. It breaks them. I started seeing a pattern across Scripture, one I'd never noticed before. Before every divine union, there's always a divine pause. Adam was put to sleep before Eve was brought to him. Abraham walked alone before Sarah's promise came. Ruth lost her husband before Boaz appeared. Even Mary was hidden in silence before she carried the greatest miracle of all. That's not coincidence. That's pattern. God empties a vessel before he fills it again. And maybe that's where you are right now. You feel like everything has been taken. Companionship, stability, even identity. But hear me. Emptiness isn't punishment. It's preparation. If that resonates with you, say it softly. I'm being prepared. Because you are. A woman from North Carolina once told me, "Elon, my husband passed away 5 years ago. I told God I'd never love again. But last month I heard him whisper, 'It's time to open your hands.'" She said she was terrified, because she realized she'd been praying for peace while clinging to pain. And that's exactly what I had been doing too. I didn't want to admit that fear had become my comfort zone, that I'd been mistaking stillness for healing. Then Jesus showed me something I'll never forget. Sometimes, the very thing you're praying for can't come until you release what's holding your heart hostage. That's why he waits. That's why he's silent. Because what he's building inside you is stronger than what you lost. And as I sat there, in that quiet space between heaven's silence and my own surrender, I whispered words I didn't plan to say. I'm not broken, I'm being rebuilt. That's when something shifted. I didn't feel fixed. I felt real. So let me ask you, because this might be the same question God is asking you right now. What part of your life are you still resisting Him in? What pain have you refused to release because it feels safer than hope? Be honest with yourself. Because before the answer comes, there will always be a pause. And before the blessing, there will always be a breaking. Stay with me. Because what came next wasn't comfort. It was fire. And that fire didn't destroy me. It revealed me. What if the pain you're feeling right now isn't meant to end you, but to expose you? Think about that for a second. What if the fire in your life isn't punishment, but proof that heaven still sees gold inside you? When Jesus didn't answer right away, I thought something was wrong. I thought I'd lost connection, maybe even favor. But then, something inside whispered, the silence isn't rejection, it's refining. That's when I began to see it clearly. Every divine promise passes through 3 gates: loss, silence, fire. Loss empties you. Silence refines you. But fire defines you. That's where I was. And maybe that's where you are. Have you noticed how fire exposes what's genuine? Gold survives it. Straw doesn't. Maybe God allowed the heat in your life, not to punish you, but to prove you. I remember saying out loud, God, why does it hurt so much? And the answer that echoed back was simple. Because I'm burning away everything that can't follow you into your future. It hit me hard. Some fires are holy. They don't burn homes. They burn illusions. They don't consume dreams. They consume pride. I had everything: success, recognition, comfort, and yet I felt empty. Do you know how terrifying that is? To have everything and still feel like nothing? That's when I finally understood the verse. Our God is a consuming fire. He consumes what's false, so only truth remains. A man from Texas wrote me around that time. He said, Elon, I lost my wife of 42 years. I don't know how to live anymore. I asked him, what if meaning hasn't left you? What if it's waiting for you on the other side of surrender? A month later, he messaged me again. He said, for the first time in decades, I prayed not for answers, but for alignment. Alignment. That word shook me. Because heaven doesn't answer ambition. It answers alignment. And alignment only comes through surrender. Here's the truth I learned the hard way. Before God rebuilds your outer world, He rebuilds your inner order. You can't carry divine companionship if human insecurity still sits on the throne. So He lets the old structure collapse, not to shame you, but to save you. If you've been through loss, heartbreak, or confusion, listen carefully. You're not being forgotten. You're being refined. Every tear, every delay, every unanswered prayer, it's part of the fire that purifies your purpose. I used to beg God to take me out of the fire. Now I thank Him for letting me walk through it. Because the man who entered the flames wasn't the same one who came out. Some nights I still feel that heat. But I've learned something sacred. When God breaks you, it's never to leave you in pieces. It's to reshape you into someone who can hold greater grace. Stay right here, don't move. Because what came after the fire was the answer. And when Jesus finally spoke, His words didn't soothe me. They shattered me in the most beautiful way imaginable. When He finally spoke, it wasn't the answer I expected. It was deeper, sharper, like truth wrapped in lightning. I thought Jesus would say yes or no. But instead, He said something that froze me completely. He said, before you think of covenant, think of character. I whispered, trembling, Lord, what do you mean? And He said, you've been searching for completion, not communion. You've been looking for someone to heal a place that only I can reach. Well, those words didn't comfort me. They crushed me. Because I realized I wasn't really asking if I should marry again. I was asking if I could escape myself. I was searching for meaning in another person, when God was trying to give me meaning through surrender. He went on, marriage isn't the reward of loneliness. It's the reflection of wholeness. That truth tore straight through me. I sat there for hours, weeping, realizing how many of us rush into new beginnings, still bleeding from old wounds. We think a new hand will heal an old scar. But God never heals through substitution. He heals through surrender. So maybe that's what you need to hear right now. You're not waiting for the right person. You're waiting to become the right person. You see, when Jesus said that, I broke, not from pain, but from realization. He wasn't rejecting me. He was protecting me. He said, if you rush, you'll repeat. If you wait, you'll witness. That line changed everything. Every delay suddenly made sense. Every silence had purpose. Every door that closed was divine defense. Because sometimes God closes a door not to punish you, but because He's still constructing the room on the other side. Maybe that's why you're watching this right now. Maybe heaven needed you to hear this. You're not being delayed. You're being developed. I finally understood. Love isn't finding the one. Love is becoming the one God can trust with another's heart. So if you're praying for a sign, this might be it. Before you seek the next chapter, let Him finish the one you're in. Because when God writes your story, He doesn't erase your pain. He redeems it. I remember sitting there, in silence, tears falling, and whispering, "Then what now, Lord?" And I felt his voice in my heart say, "Don't marry again, until you've met me deeper than your desire." Those words echoed through me like thunder in eternity. Because I finally understood, this wasn't about romance, it was about restoration. So if you're listening right now, don't rush what heaven is still refining. Because when he's done, when he's truly done, you won't just find love, you'll embody it. And that's the kind of love that never burns out.